On this vertical bank close to the small river, we see a population of begonia, which has beautiful heart-shaped leaves, a little bit undulate. So we see it here vertically, totally green. Here we see the leaves, which are a little bit wavy and perfectly designed. And we see some other individuals here. All these are green, but here we see another two individuals which are not green but brown. This is, we know, quite usual in understory plants and especially in begonia to have side by side different colors. So this one is brown. Here another green one with a male flower. The male flower with two tepals, only two tepals, and it is totally open. It has a creeping stem. Actually, we see the stem is creeping on the rocks vertically. So here in Moluccas, we see that many begonias actually have a climbing stems totally uprest to the substrate. It's not so common. While looking at the begonia, I was surprised to see small brown things, brown balls things, and actually it is the axis of another plant which bears the fruits. On this other plant, when we follow, we see that the stem is coming from the white trunk. So this white trunk is one of these ficus species. We see the leaves just above, which are quite wide. It's a quite small tree species of ficus, and it is the group of ficus which has cauliflorous, and even not cauliflorous but flagelliflorous inflorescence. It means long stems, flagelliform stems, creeping on the forest floor like this and bearing the fruits. Very small fruits in this case. Usually this kind of ficus have much bigger fruits like this. These ones are so cute, so tiny. And actually we see that this axis is living for a very, very long time, because we see here in the apical part, we see that they are totally congested internodes, and we see the new figs appearing at the top of these axillary stem. So there is one main stem which is branched, and the branches bear all the figs. So it means that this stem is probably living many years, producing regularly new figs at the top of the small lateral stems. Here in the same habitat we see another species of begonia, but this one is totally different. It has erect stems, and the shape of the leaves of course is different, and we see the flowers which have the female flower with 5 tepals. We see the ovary with 3 wings. The female flowers are just together at the base in the axil of a leaf. We can see them here, and after will be the male flowers above, smaller, and we see the 2 tepals of the male flower. So it is probably a petermania due to the 2 female flowers together. It is an erect species, so 2 species side by side along this small river. We see a Pentaphragma. So the Pentaphragma are mostly from Malay Peninsula to Borneo, I think also in New Guinea. I did not know we could find them in Moluccas, but obviously Pentaphragma here. It's not the same species as the ones I've seen in Borneo or in peninsular Malaysia, but it is obviously a Pentaphragma. On this rock is a brown individual of the tall begonia with a tall stem. It has a very different shape of leaves of the other one, and the leaves are very velvety, probably, yes, dark brown on the underside. It is still young. The stem is not too much developed, but here we see another individual, which is green, which has already a more developed stem. You can see it here, and already it seems, no, not inflorescence, but new leaves appearing here. So we see side by side the green and the brown form. This is quite usual, of course, in begonia. On the rock cliff, in this quite narrow gully where is flowing a small forest stream, here we see a very beautiful patch of begonia. It is not the same as the two we have seen before, probably the same group, but the shape of the leaves is different, of course. It has not high stems, and it has the pure white flowers, especially all the male flowers with two tepals, and we see also the female flowers with the ovary, with 3 lobes of the ovary. The leaves are perfectly shaped, and not too many insects did eat it. We see that the stem actually is developed. It's a begonia with erect stem, but not high at all. All the stems are coming just from the base, just here. We see, so all the stems are growing and a little bit creeping, also a little bit creeping on the rock. So it's why it's extending from one original base, and then the stems are spreading like this and still fixing even to the rock with adventitious roots. Here we clearly see all the stems originating from the base and then spreading like this and covering the rocks and fixing with adventitious roots. So from one base it is spreading all over the rock. Very elegant creature. The place also is very beautiful. The rock is totally black, covered just a little bit with algae and some mosses, so it's a kind, maybe the paradise would be something like that. We'll see, maybe. So on this rock, we see a beautiful clump of a member of Zingiberaceae, a ginger, and we see all the stems arising from the base, so in a sympodial habit, typical of Zingiberaceae, and we see the base inflated of each new stem, and we see actually that it's not so common. The inflorescence is totally branched. Usually it has 3 main branches and small pinkish white flowers, and also we see an older inflorescence as the fruits have developed, and these are bright orange berries. And after, yes, we see clearly the structure with 3 elements for the inflorescence. It looks like an Alpinia, probably alpinoid, but most probably the genus Alpinia. In some way, it's quite similar to Alpinia galanga, but the inflorescence is actually different. But it's very elegant, just all the stems perfectly horizontal, so all the leaves can catch the low light level of the gully. So it is perfectly happy here in this gully. So this shrubby Lea actually has just pinnate leaves, not in 3 parts, not pluripinnate, just pinnate, and it has quite a huge black berries. So we see another individual of this ficus with flagelliflory, so I mean the fig coming out of stems running along the ground, and this one is different from the previous one. The figs are much bigger, and also the color is different because the first one was beige brown, and this one, the ripe figs, are bright red. But actually, we know that for many ficus species, they are dioecious. Probably the one with the small brown figs probably is a male individual, and this one with the much bigger red fruits, red figs, is probably a female one. And when I cut, I see, of course, the latex, the white latex, and probably we can see inside the silicone, yes, we can see all the tiny seeds, which are tiny acants, merge inside the jelly. We see all the jelly and the tiny acants, which are just brown dots, very, very small brown dots, merge inside the jelly. So it is probably the female individual of this ficus. So I'm a little bit in trouble because I see the stem coming from here, so probably I should like to see, oh yes, here we see, yes, actually the stem is emerging from the trunk. We see even higher, like this, and so all these actually are the flagelliform inflorescence arising from the trunk, and this one probably comes from these stems here. Oh yes, you see a big one here also in the soil. So the figs are maturing close to the soil, and sometimes the stem appears just at least 2 meters above the base of the trunk. I think this climbing aroid, Aracea, which is then falling down, and I think it's the Epipremnum ceramense, and we clearly see on this detached branch that there is a main branch and lateral branches produced at almost each axil of the leaves, because we see at each node there is a lateral branch, and usually these branches are the fertile branches. So it's a little bit similar to what we see in the genus Piper, but of course it's not plesiotropic branches, it's simply other erect branches. But anyway, there are not so many Araceae which are regularly branched like this. Many pothos, of course, but otherwise it's not so common. C'est étonnant les bases, c'est quand même assez fou. Hein. Here is quite a big Cauliflorus ficus, and what we see is very strange because we see some big bowls, big patches here, much branched, and we see that actually all the thick-bearing branches arise from this bumpy, very bumpy structure. So it means probably all these are very, very old because the stems bearing the figs after they are falling, of course, after some years they produce figs. After falling, and we see only the scars of the bumpy structure covering all the trunk. Even here, a new one, quite small here, which is probably arising quite late, but it's very strange to see all these persisting bumpy structures around the trunk. We see the maturing figs are all upward directed, so the ostiole is just at the top, and the color is nice because it's green in the center and light yellow, and then turning progressively reddish with small yellow dots. In this gully, on the way to a waterfall in the karst area, very close to the seashore actually, maybe only 2 kilometers away. And we see it's very humid, some patches of forest are remaining. Of course it's very disturbed, but it's since it's a gully, it's very humid and many plants are still growing there. Of course the common Spleniodnidus, some Araceae, Schismatoglottis, some ferns, and here a very elegant piper is climbing on the rock. Of course this is the monopodial phase of the piper, so it will climb on the rock, and when it will reach a tree trunk it will produce the lateral stems, but actually at this stage it is very elegant. And there are some bamboos, of course, some wild bananas also, so it's typical of this type of forest. So here I'm in the spray of a waterfall. We are in the southern part of Ceram in a karst area, and we can see that actually in the spray many plants are growing, and especially begonias. Sometimes begonias like to be quite away from the spray, but here we see that this species is perfectly happy with the spray of the waterfall. We see also some ferns like the long fronds, probably a Nephrolepis. We see of course some piper climbing, we see some Araceae also. I try to approach this area here because I don't know who are these plants. Yes, this is an Elatostema, a small species, totally in the spray of the waterfall. Just above, I see quite long leaves of somebody who is probably a Cirtandra in the Gesneriaceae. So when we approach, we see that there are actually quite many species, many mosses, and also many hepatics, Marchantias, are growing there on the rocks. So it's permanently humid like this beautiful place. Of course, we know that many begonia species love to thrive in very humid environments, but here is the first time that I see a begonia with water dripping along its leaves, always like this, permanent water on the leaves, and the leaves are perfectly healthy. So it's almost, we could almost consider it's an aquatic begonia because the leaves are never dry, and we know that the climate is an equatorial climate without dry season. So we see actually that this begonia is really almost rheophytic, almost, it's very, very strange to see water permanently flowing on the leaves, and many other ferns, of course, are here, same as some Elatostema and Araceae. Here we see Costus. Of course, the genus has been changed for this Asian species, but anyway, it was always considered as being a Costus. This one is a little bit velvety, not really velvety, but has hairs on the leaves, upper and lower surface of the leaves. And this is the mature infructescence, and actually we see there are the red bracts, and the fruit has itself a red ovary, and when it's ripe, it is opening, and we see the structure opening totally white, and the seeds, I try to remove one because it's ripe, and the seeds have been removed, but the interior part of the ovary is totally bright white, very shiny, and the seeds usually are black. Here the seeds have probably been eaten already by a bird. I try another one which is almost ripe, just to see if I see the seeds, and we clearly see that the seeds are black. So there is a contrast between the red periphery, the white inner part of the ovary, and the bright black, shiny black seeds. Here we see the bright white labellum of the flower, but in this species it's interesting to see that the bracts, bright red bracts, and also the funnel-shaped upper part of the ovary are very prominent in this species. Before the name was Costus speciosus, but actually I see that this one, it seems that the shape is quite different, and even the flower, the tubular part of the flower is different, and the shape of the labellum, which is reduced, so maybe it is another species. It was changed to be the genus Itchenia, if I remember, and maybe it did change again, but I think actually that this species, I did never see it before. We clearly see the typical leaf arrangement of Costus and allied genera. So the spiral leaf arrangement, which is absolutely perfect in forest understory to catch the low light level, because there are not at all overlapping of the leaves all along the stem. So it's a perfect architecture to live in forest understory. On this tree we see a climbing Aracea, and when I see the shape of the leaf, of the divided leaves, and the venation pattern, obviously this is a species of Amydrium. It is a small genus, and actually one common species, Amydrium medium, in all over Sumatra, Peninsular Malaysia. Another Zipelianum is in New Guinea, and there is a third species, and I think this is the third species, which is, I don't remember the name, but it's not Zipelianum, it's a little bit smaller, but with it climbing, it has quite huge leaves. We see it along the trunk, and they are perfectly divided, so the genus Amydrium is a quite small genus, altogether 4 species, because another with entire leaves, but it is quite special according to the structure of the inflorescence, so different from the Rhaphidophora, the Epipremnum, and other allied genera like Scindapsus. So this is still another species of a begonia. It is a quite small species, not hairy at all, with shiny leaves, and we see the inflorescence with a long peduncle, and here are the female and male flowers, but the male flowers in this species have 4 tepals and not 2, so probably it's not a Petermania, but another section of the genus Begonia. It is not really creeping, it's a little bit rhizomatous. We see the stem and creeping a little bit, but short internodes, very long petioles, so almost rosetted. And this one growing on the rocks, we did not see it before. So since we did arrive in Moluccas, in Ambon and here in southern part of Ceram, in a few days we did see at least 5 and maybe 6 different species of begonia. So finally, I'm surprised. So it's so easy to see them. Of course, we try to find the right habitat, but it's good to see so many species. We are along a karst, just facing the sea, the southern part of Ceram, and here we see a population of begonia, but I'm really surprised because I've seen many begonias with brown leaves, but here, this individual, it's incredible. The leaves are almost black color, and the reverse is totally brown, and it is the same species we see everywhere here, but here we see all the leaves are totally almost black. It is a creeping species. We see the stem creeping on the limestone, on the karst, so it's growing perfectly like this. We see just around another group which are totally green. In this population, we see many pure green individuals, and here some brown individuals, but not as dark brown as the other one. But we see clearly that this species is really a patchwork of mixed population of green and brown individuals. So huge leaves, it's a very big form. This form is very big compared to the others we've seen before. So it's a perfect mixed population on this karst of this begonia, which is quite common, of course, but so exceptional. Here we see just behind this Caryota, we see this blackish begonia, and what's interesting, when I move the Caryota, where there is more light, we see it becomes totally shiny and even a little bit bluish. It has some bluish iridescence. The leaves are absolutely perfectly shaped. We see all the division of the vines, almost dichotomous division of the vines, and the shape is absolutely perfect. When arriving in this gully, I see a huge green thing, which is obviously a monocot, and when I look more closely, it is probably a crinum. When I see this incredibly high trunk, and what I want to see is to see the huge individual at the top of this slope. So I try to climb to arrive just to see how is the stem, because I can say I've never seen a crinum, because obviously this is a crinum. I've never seen this. The trunk is like a banana trunk. We can see the trunk, which is maybe 30 centimeters in diameter. Huge trunk. It is more than 1 meter high, and it's a spiral leaf arrangement. It's the Sphirodisticus. We see the arrangement of the leaves, and it has long yellow roots hanging and fixing the stem, the same as for instance for Alocasia. It is a thick stem, fleshy roots which are growing downward in the soil. Beautiful population here. We see quite many individuals, but this one is the grandfather, probably very old individual. Okay, no inflorescence, but it seems that probably it has white flowers, which is the most usual in crinum. So I'll check to know what species is this crinum. But anyway, so happy to see the biggest crinum I've ever seen in the world up to now. Another species of the ginger family. This is one of the group of species with inflorescence emerging from the base of the stems, and we can see clearly the periphery red and the central part is bright white. It's very elegant. You can see on this young erect inflorescence. So these are inflorescence, but now no flowers. But because usually flowering early morning, so maybe this morning there were flowers, but the design of the bracts is incredibly beautiful. Here is a clump of Alpinia, and it's another species, of course, when we look at the shape of the inflorescence, and it's quite incredible because this one is probably 8-9 meters tall, because it just emerges from the bottom of the gully, and we see the long stems. The leaves themselves are more than 1 meter long. They are very wavy, very elegantly winged, and we see at the top of the stem the branch inflorescence, and we see that all the individuals have 4 branches, and we see clearly the small flowers which are pale yellow with labellum, the yellow labellum. And what's interesting is that the flowers appear at different areas on the inflorescence. It means actually that each part of the inflorescence is able to produce new flowers at different time of the development of the inflorescence itself. We see a young branch of inflorescence with a long bract, sheathing long bract, which is brown, and the young, not yet open flowers. So here in this clump we see the leaves, the young inflorescence, the mature flowering inflorescence, and the dead leaves. It's almost dead, and we see one of the leaves falling, and all the lower ones have disappeared. On this inflorescence, actually, each elementary part has many bracts at the base, which are mostly sterile bracts, which become brown, and then the fertile bracts are at the summit, and we see, for instance, here a flower at anthesis, which is here at the top of the last bract, the green bract, and we see the very strange shape of the flower itself, the different petals with this one which has this very special shape, and the labellum erect. This small tree along the river is obviously a member of the genus Sauroia. Sauroia, it's in Actinidiaceae, so it's very close to Theaceae family, but now it's in Actinidiaceae. And Sauroia is a genus with many species in Borneo, in New Guinea, in Sulawesi, in Moluccas also. And it's really the area of the world where it's most diversified, and we see the quite typical structure of the inflorescence with the bracts. There are bracts surrounding the flowers just under, so the bracts are protecting from the rain. We see here, for instance, a white flower opening. We see the petals, the 5 petals. It is not yet open, but it will be open quite soon. So these Sauroia are really important members among the small, most of them are small forest understory trees, usually between 3 and 10 meters in height, and also sometimes along rivers like this. We see clearly the terminalia branching pattern. We see the stem which becomes erect, and then at the base a new stem appears and becomes horizontal, then produces the leaves with thick internodes, and again like this, growing horizontally and then growing upward. So it allows all the leaves to be separate to avoid self-shading, this branching pattern. So we see clearly the inflorescence protected by the bracts, very often hairy. It's very common in the genus Soroia to have hairy bracts like this. It's in some way a little bit like many Syrtandra species, and even the leaves are a little bit Syrtandra-like, but of course it's totally different families since Syrtandra is a Gesneriaceae. So we clearly see the terminalia branching, so the stem growing first horizontally, then growing upward, and at the base of the curve, a new stem is growing horizontally with only long internodes and then crowded internodes, and it becomes thicker and thicker, and again in the curve there is a new shoot growing horizontally. This is absolutely perfect to separate all the groups of foliage of each stem, thus avoiding self-shading. This is still another species of ficus, which is a cauliflorus on much branched lateral stems, which are only bearing figs, very special shape with ridges all along the fig. They are bright green, probably becoming yellow when ripe, but at this stage still bright green. I see an orange one, yes, here. Yes, it is probably mature. Inside, all the tiny acants merge in the pulp. Ça sent bon. There is a smell. Oh yes, it has a very good smell. Not at all same as our figs, but very fruity, very good smell. On the forest floor, along a small river, we see a begonia, but very different from the other ones, because this one is on the forest floor, not at all on the rocks, and it is creeping along the ground, very elegant. It has shiny leaves, very asymmetric, very usual begonia shape. It is totally adult because we clearly see the inflorescence. So we see the small male flowers with two tepals, and here we see two female flowers at the base with a winged ovary, pink winged ovary. So probably this is again a species of the section Petermania, but it is perfectly, sometimes a little bit erect, but perfectly growing like this on the forest floor. And just before leaving, when I look, I see just here, 50 centimeters away, another begonia species with more orbicular leaves and the more usual creeping habit, usual for the begonia from Moluccas, from Maluku. So the stem is creeping and it has a very crinkled, a little bit crinkled leaves with hairs and a very beautiful light green, a little bit iridescent green color. At the base of this trunk, we see first a very beautiful fern, which has long pinnules here, and we see that along the rashes there are smaller and smaller pinnules all along, so this is very elegant. We see the shape of these pinnules, so it is a rosetted species. And just close to this elegant fern, we see another elegant plant. This is a Mapania cyperacea, and it is very pandanus-like. It's very typical of most Mapania species. It's a genus we can find mostly in Africa, in tropical Africa and in Asia, but also in tropical America, so it's quite strange to see a genus which is from forest understory, which is not dispersed very far because the seeds are enclosed in protected bracts, so no dispersal way, but in spite of that, we find the genus on all the 3 continents. But anyway, all the species are different, of course, and we see this one is very elegant due to the so long acuminate tip of each leaf. So it is perfectly elegant. It has quite soft leaves. I don't see inflorescence, but inflorescence are very small things. This is a rattan, so a climbing palm, which is a spiny. We see all the spines along the stem, of course. We see the shape of the leaflets, which is really fun-shaped. And I know, for instance, the genus Cortalsia, which has typical leaflets like this one. And this one is elegant because the rashes is bright orange, and we see at the end of the leaf, of the rashes of the leaf, we see all the spines, the main, the midrib. I'm very careful because of course it's spiny, and we see how it can fix to the trees due to all these spines recurved backward, downward, so it means that as soon as it touches other plants, it becomes fixed. And when we are walking in forest, it's terrible this, because very often for the clothes and even for the eyes it can be very dangerous. But anyway, it's a very beautiful rattan, and also rattan are so useful for human beings to make furniture and many other accessories. But I love this bright orange design of the rachis. So climbing on this small tree, and we see the very perfectly white elements like leaves, but actually it's not a white leaves, it is a sepal moving like a handkerchief, for instance. Actually, oh, parrots. Actually, it's the increasing sepal of a Musanda. Musanda is a member of the Rubiaceae, so the coffee family. It's a genus, so there are many species in Africa, and tropical Africa, and in Asia, but this one has two things very special: the size of this white sepal element, which is called the calicophyll, like a flag, and feel like a leaf. This one is pure white, very bright white, probably reflecting some UV light, and also very large and very wide. And we see the small flowers, which are the corolla, the small yellow-orange things emerging from the center of one of the flowers, with only one enlarged lobe of the sepal. Here on this cliff, which is covered by quite many species, we see the Pollia and the Commelinaceae, we see the fronds of Nephrolepis, we see the Begonia we did see already before, but also what is quite special is this bluish iridescent fern. It's the genus Anthrophium, and it has always long, thick, succulent fronds. And usually the design, yes, we see the design of the sori, which are all along the vines. Sori are always along the vines like this, and the vines themselves are blackish on the lower side of the front. So it's a very elegant fern hanging, epiphytic, or like this, Saxicolus, we'll see also around it many Selaginella, of course. On this limestone cliff, we see a population of an Herbaceus, erect Herbaceus, half-shrubby species. And actually, when I see the inflorescence here, I see it is a species of Ophiorrhiza. Ophiorrhiza is a genus of the Rubiaceae, and of the coffee family. And it's the first that I see here, and it's very strange because in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, Borneo, Philippines, we see many species like this, Herbaceus plants on vertical cliffs belonging to Gesneriaceae, Rubiaceae, Melastomataceae, for instance, plus other, of course, and very few here. On the cliff we see everywhere begonia species and individuals, but no Argostema at all, for instance, while there are in peninsular Malaysia only about 50 or 60 species. Same for many Gesneriaceae like Codonobea, almost 80 in peninsular Malaysia. So just to say that in this kind of habitat, usually in western part of the Wallace Line, there are many Herbaceus species growing on the rocks, but very few east of Wallace Line, because even in New Guinea we have seen many begonias, of course, and many gingers, epiphytic gingers, etc., but quite few species on the vertical cliff like this. So it's interesting to see here this Ophiorrhiza, and why there are so few Herbaceous species east of Wallace Line. It's also the same for southern hemisphere. Even in temperate forests like New Zealand and Australia, very few herbaceous species. This cliff is totally covered by a begonia, one more time a begonia, covering, it is totally vertical, so actually when I create my vertical gardens, we see that in nature the vertical gardens are something which happens as soon as you have a vertical cliff which remains humid. It's why it's mostly at the base of the limestone cliffs, because through limestone the water is dripping, so it's a perfect substrate for all the plants growing vertically. Of course, if it's a big limestone, if there are big holes in full sun, we can have bigger plants, but in shade you have mostly small plants like this, so a perfect natural vertical garden. On this inflorescence, actually, we see the small male flowers, and also here we see clearly a female flower with the three-winged ovary, and it is close to a male flower, so we see it's not at all the same structure as the Petermania begonia. It's another section. I should like to see there are 2 or 4 tepals in the female flower. Yes, 4 tepals. Quite equal tepals, but 4. Same as the male flowers, both have 4 tepals. So I came in this quite deep swamp. I hope there are not crocodiles, but I think, I'm not sure in Ceram there are crocodiles or not, I don't know, but I'm sure they will not be here. I came because I did see this population of an Aracea with big sagittate leaves, totally sagittate leaves, and it is a population of a Cyrtosperma. We know that the genus Cyrtosperma has most species east of Wallace Line, so from Sulawesi to Maluku, and then New Guinea and Solomon Islands. So all this area is where the genus is most diversified. So here is one of these species of Cyrtosperma. Some, especially Cyrtosperma merkuzi, has been widely cultivated, especially in Papua, with many different varieties. But here, nobody eats the tubers of this Cyrtosperma. We see it's a dense population. Why? Because actually there is a very intense vegetative propagation, and all the stolons. I cannot see actually from here exactly the shape and the size of the stolons, but they can propagate vegetative propagation through stolons. So each plant has quite many leaves, and we see also that there are spines along the petiole of these leaves. So it's on the, oh, I see a fruit. I should like to try to approach a little bit. A quite huge infructescence here of this Cyrtosperma. So here I see the infructescence. So we see it's a very congested spadix because it's an Aracea. So we see the characteristic spadix structure. Probably it is each flower which has sepals which are totally spiny. It has spiny structure, and it is very, very compact, same as some infructescence also of Cyclanthaceae, for instance, and many Aracea, of course. So this Cyrtosperma has vegetative propagation, but probably also has some seedlings, but I don't know where can germinate the seedlings. Maybe they are submerged. at the beginning. But anyway, we see clearly the infructescence here. Little bit difficult to emerge from the swamp.
No, it's for you, it's not.
Actually, this costus that we see almost everywhere, now when I look more closely, I see there is a main stem, very erect stem, quite thick, at least 3 or 4 centimeters thick, and it is branched, and we see lateral branches, and also terminal inflorescence at the end of the main stem on all the lateral stem. This costus has leaves hairy on both surfaces. It's quite short hairs, but we can see them when we put the leaf like this. It's a transparent short hairs we see on the superior surface, adaxial surface of the leaf, but also on the under surface where they are smaller and more oppressed. The developing infructescence, so we clearly see the maturing fruits which are bright green, and we see the 3 parts of the ovary. It is a little bit winged ovary. We see the 3 parts, and what is very beautiful, we see the calyx, which is remaining like a tubular calyx, and we see here the flower emerging. So we see the lateral petals and the labellum in the middle, the white, bright white labellum, and also we can see, I try to open a little bit, and we can see the stamen and ovary here, yellow, the yellow stamens and white stigma at the top. So it is a perfect flower shape for a ginger. I did, of course, stir a little bit the basal lobe, the labellum of the flower, but they are lasting only for a few hours. So when I move forward the upper part, we see clearly that the stamen in all this group of gingers, there is only 1 stamen, and we see here the stamen with the anther opening on the other side, and we see the small filament actually is the pistil, and at the end of the pistil we can see, if I can show it, okay, we can see the stigma ending the pistil, which is totally included in the stamen. So the yellow top, which looks like a stamen or a yellow stigma, actually is just something colorful, attracting insects, because it looks like a stamen with pollen or nectar, but actually it is just a guidance, a guide for the insect to go inside and to have the pollination, taking from the stamen the pollen and putting on another flower on the stigma, which is just at the top of the stamen like this. Typical structure of Gingiberaceae sensullato flowers. So we clearly see that the style of the pistil is totally protected by the 2 parts of the anther, so totally inside like this. Only the stigma is appearing just above the anther. So everything is totally congested in the ginger flowers. Il monte.
Ouais, il a monté sur tes cheveux.
C'est vrai? Ça va, t'en sûr? Il y est?
Ouais.
Il est. Ah oui. Il est.
Il est sur ton épaule.
Ah oui, ok.
Ah, so cute. Very big. Very spiny, non?
T'as vu comme elle est bizarre?
Elle est incroyable. Fine.
Oui, oui, et puis les longs entremets. Ah oui, c'est assez étonnant quand même. Here I see the trunk of a very small tree fern, but tree because it's already more than 2 meters tall. And it's very special because the trunk is very narrow, only about 2 centimeters in diameter. This is one thing. The internodes are incredibly long because usually tree ferns have very short internodes and all the fronds are emerging from the top. But here we see all the fronds emerging one after each other. And also what is very strange is that we see that the rachis of the frond is totally fixed along about maybe 5 or 6 centimeters along the stipe of the fern. So when we see this, the black rachis fixed, it looks like if a rachis was climbing on a trunk and then emerging from the trunk. But actually, this is the reddish thing is the trunk of the tree fern, and the first black thing is the base of the pétiole of the frond, and then all the fronds are displaying their foliage at each successive level along the stem. So we see that on about 1 meter, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fronds distributed along 1 meter along the stipe. On voit plus rien du tout. So here we see this tree fern, but actually here in Maluku there are quite many species of tree ferns, and globally, if I remember, there are about 700 different species of ferns, and among them quite many tree ferns. So this is recalling what we can see in New Guinea. New Guinea is also very rich in tree fern species, and also in Sulawesi, but mostly on the east side of the Wallace Line, on the Saul platform. There are many tree fern species, especially in altitude, but I've never seen before this kind of tree fern, which is so special with so long internodes. Here I see a climbing plant. In some way it recalls me the Melastomataceae, which was before in the genus Medinilla, but which have been separated, which has sometimes alternate leaves, and this one has alternate leaves, and we see the brown tip. Oh, the rain! Ooh la la! Yes, heavier rain is coming now. It's so dark, it means rainy. But anyway, it is beautiful. We see, if we see something, we can see the vines, which are very well designed on the lower surface of the leaf. Wow! Along the main branches of this trunk, just above the sea, we see incredibly long stems of an orchid, totally vertically hanging freely, and we see the young stems, light green at the base, so it's a clumped species, and it has many long hanging stems. We don't see the inflorescence, but the stems are at least 2 meters or 2.5 meters long, and the shape, the distribution of the leaf is perfectly disticus. We can see this especially on some of the young hanging stems. Wow! On this cliff we see different species of climbing Aracea. There is a dissected leaf, so it's a poorly dissected form of Epipremnum pinnatum, probably. But we see other with a long acuminate leaf on the bright green entire leaves with a long acumen, and this is probably a Rhaphidophora, which has a successive horizontal fans of leaves. And probably many things we don't see from here. Here on the soil, on sandy soil just behind the beach on its limestone area, we see actually the piper of the group Piper ornatum, Piper fragile. I see it because when we see the dark green leaves with the pink vines, so we have seen this species in Solomon Islands, in New Guinea. We have seen it recently in Sulawesi, in Tongkoko, in North Sulawesi, near Manado. And I know it is also in Philippine Island. I was thinking it would be also in Maluku. And yes, it is here in Maluku. And it is growing always like this, close to the beach. And long time ago, in 1888, a species was collected and brought back for horticulture in Holland. And it was named Piper ornatum, but nobody knows exactly from where it comes in Sulawesi, if north, south, nothing. But in Tongkoko, we have seen this species. So it was named Piper ornatum, but 4 years later was another name, Piper rubro-venosum, which is exactly like this, with vines pinkish, reddish. But 40 years before, in 1840, a piper was named Piper fragile, and now when we look at herbarium specimen, we see that Piper fragile has a large distribution in all these Pacific islands, from so east of the famous Wallace Line, it means Philippines, Sulawesi, Maluku, New Guinea, and also some small islands, Sunda Islands, and always close together, green form and the form with the design. So obviously the name ornatum is a superfluous name which was named after, and it has to be a synonym of Piper fragile. And in some herbarium specimen, for instance by Pickle, we see that it's indicated that the beautiful leaves were collected by the local people, I think it's Mariana Island, something like that, to have ornament. So actually, this complex Piper ornatum, Piper fragile, Piper rubro-venosum, actually all these plants should be named Piper fragile. We see this one is quite dark, some are still more dark green, and some individuals are totally plain green, like usual Piper fragile. The leaves are perfectly designed, we see on these individuals, and after, when climbing, of course, as usual, the leaves become green. They are still with the petiole peltate, with the petiole inserted here. It's very interesting to see that actually, every time we see both the green and the marbled form, with marbled with pink, so really this species is very variable, and everywhere we see the same green individuals and individuals with light pink vines on the upper surface of the leaf. We perfectly see in this nephrolepis the shape of each pinule. We see the black rashes on the lower side, and we see clearly that the lower part of the pinule is much longer than the upper part, and it is following the black rashes. But we see clearly it's totally asymmetric. Midrib is here, small lobe, large lobe. Probably it's Nephrolepis falcatifolium and or falcatum. Probably this group of Nephrolepis, very rigid. Here on this front, for instance, we clearly see the hydatodes, so the white spots at the margin of the pinule, small, less than 1 millimeter diameter white spots, and these hydatodes are excreting water, and most important, excess of minerals. And we see that here we are just a close few meters away from the sea, so they receive spray of the sea, so from the root system they can absorb salt and they can evacuate salt through these hydatodes along the pinules margins. Here I see something which looks like a small species of ginger, because all the stems in the area are the same size, and actually when I look here I see it is a small species. So according to the shape of the erect inflorescence, it is probably the genus Zingiber, so a true ginger, Zingiber, and we see the bracts, reddish green bracts, small white flowers. I think I've never seen a so small species of Zingiber, and because it's really small. And just to be sure, I check the leaf. Oh yes, because Zingiber, contrary to other Zingiberaceae, is easy to recognize due to the geniculum at the base of the petiole, of the short petiole. So we see the whitish, greenish white protuberance, swollen, the swollen part. This is a geniculum, and this is characteristic of the genus Zingiber, contrary to the other genera of Zingiberaceae. This very bright white flower opening in the evening, because now is more than 6 o'clock and it's a sunset, so just opening now, is a very toxic plant. Now it is in the genus Lobelia, it's a Lobeliaceae. It has a very long tube. On this vertical limestone quartz cliff, we see a very beautiful clump of orchid, and this is a vanda, a huge vanda species with erect stem, perfect disticus leaf arrangement, and growing among the ferns like Drinaria, of course, Nephrolepis, usual ferns, but this vanda is not so usual. This huge clump of orchid, epiphyte orchid, is obviously Grammatophyllum speciosum. I think it's this species because we know it from Malaysia, from Borneo, and I think it extends also east of the Wallace Line to Sulawesi, Maluku, and New Guinea. But I have to check if it's really the same species, speciosum, of the genus Grammatophyllum. So we see the old stems hanging, recurving, only the upper part of the stem is recurved upward, so displaying the leaves in order to catch the light, and at the top we see the young stems which are much more erect, and then when becoming older they are descending step by step, so it's why it's a so elegant global shape, a kind of cupola for all the foliage of the Grammatophyllum. It's quite funny to see just below the Grammatophyllum orchid the clump of a Pandanus, which has almost the same type of leaves. We see a Pandanus species close to the sea. It has quite a long stem, not much branched. We see actually terminal inflorescence, and we see many insects. It is obviously a male inflorescence, so it means it's a male individual, because we know that Pandanus are dioecious, male and female, different individuals. And here we see in detail all the small stamens united in phalanges of stamens, and the insects, maybe some are drinking nectar, some others are collecting the pollen, but anyway they will ensure the fecundation when they will touch female inflorescence of another individual. Even crabs are interested by the pollen of this male inflorescence of Pandanus. Wow, so cute! Arboreal crab. Wow, maybe always interested by this. Wow, yeah, he's taking with his claws. Oh yes, and it eats the pollen.